Let me tell you the story of a man whose beauty never fades, but whose soul slowly collapses under the weight of his own choices. The Picture of Dorian Gray is one of the most famous and provocative novels written by Oscar Wilde. Published in 1890, the novel explores themes of beauty, morality, temptation, and the dangerous pursuit of pleasure without responsibility. The story begins in London, in the elegant studio of a talented painter named Basil Hallward. Basil has recently completed a portrait of an exceptionally handsome young man named Dorian Gray. The painting captures Dorian's beauty so perfectly that Basil considers it the finest work he has ever created. However, Basil feels strangely uneasy about displaying the portrait because he believes he has revealed too much of his admiration for the young man. One afternoon, Basil's friend, the witty and cynical aristocrat Lord Henry Wotton, visits the studio. While they are talking, Dorian Gray arrives. This meeting becomes the turning point of the entire story. Lord Henry immediately becomes fascinated by Dorian's youth and innocence. In his charming but manipulative way, he begins sharing his philosophy about life. According to Lord Henry, the most important thing in life is the pursuit of beauty, pleasure, and personal experience. He argues that people should not restrict themselves with morality or social expectations. Instead, they should enjoy every possible sensation while they are young. Dorian listens to these ideas with growing excitement and curiosity. Until this moment, he has lived a relatively simple and innocent life. But Lord Henry's words awaken something powerful inside him. When Basil finally reveals the finished portrait, Dorian is astonished by how beautiful he looks. However, Lord Henry's words about the temporary nature of youth suddenly disturb him. Dorian realizes that while the portrait will remain young and perfect forever, he himself will eventually grow old and lose his beauty. This thought terrifies him. In a moment of emotional desperation, Dorian makes a wish that will shape the rest of his life. He wishes that the portrait would grow old instead of him, while he remains young forever. He even declares that he would give his soul for such a miracle. At first, this seems like nothing more than a dramatic expression of emotion, but soon it becomes clear that something mysterious and supernatural has happened. Not long after this event, Dorian falls in love with a beautiful young actress named Sybil Vane. She performs in a small theater and captivates audiences with her passionate acting. Dorian is enchanted by her talent and innocence. To him, she represents everything beautiful and romantic in life. Dorian quickly becomes obsessed with Sybil and promises to marry her. Basil is happy to see Dorian in love, believing that it will keep him morally grounded. Lord Henry, however, views the situation as an interesting experiment in human emotion. One evening, Dorian invites Basil and Lord Henry to watch Sybil perform. But something unexpected happens during the performance. Instead of acting with her usual brilliance, Sybil performs poorly. Her acting feels artificial and lifeless. Afterward, she explains the reason to Dorian. She says that since falling in love with him, she no longer cares about acting. The stage was once her only reality, but now that she has experienced real love, the artificial emotions of the theater feel meaningless. Dorian, however, reacts with cruelty. He loved Sybil because of the beauty of her art, not because of who she truly was. When she loses that artistic brilliance, he suddenly sees her as ordinary and disappointing. In a harsh and selfish moment, he rejects her completely and ends their relationship. Devastated by this rejection, Sybil takes her own life. When Dorian returns home that night, he notices something shocking. The expression in Basil's portrait has changed slightly. The face now shows a faint trace of cruelty around the mouth. This is the moment when Dorian realizes that his wish has come true. The portrait is beginning to reflect the corruption of his soul, while his own face remains young and beautiful. At first, Dorian feels guilt and promises to become a better person, but Lord Henry soon convinces him that the experience is simply another interesting chapter in life. Gradually, Dorian begins embracing a lifestyle of pleasure and self-indulgence. Years pass, but Dorian never ages. His face remains as youthful and charming as the day Basil painted his portrait. Meanwhile, the painting hidden in his attic grows increasingly ugly and monstrous, reflecting the consequences of his actions. During these years, Dorian becomes famous in London society for his beauty and charm. However, rumors begin spreading about his secret life. Many of the people who become close to him experience tragedy, scandal, or moral ruin. Although no one can prove his involvement, his reputation slowly darkens. Throughout this time, Dorian becomes fascinated with exotic experiences, rare objects, music, perfumes, and luxurious lifestyles. He collects beautiful things from around the world, hoping that art and beauty will fill the emptiness growing inside him. But nothing truly satisfies him. Eventually, Basil Hallward decides to confront Dorian about the disturbing rumors surrounding his life. Basil still believes there must be goodness inside the young man he once admired so deeply. When Basil visits Dorian late one night, he begs him to deny the accusations. Instead of defending himself, Dorian reveals the terrible secret. He takes Basil upstairs and shows him the portrait hidden in the attic. The painting is now horrifying. The once beautiful face has become twisted and monstrous, reflecting years of selfishness, cruelty, and moral corruption. It is the physical representation of Dorian's damaged soul. Basil is shocked and horrified by what he sees. He begs Dorian to pray for forgiveness and change his life. But Dorian cannot bear the guilt and judgment in Basil's reaction. In a sudden burst of rage and panic, he grabs a knife and murders Basil. This act marks the darkest point of his moral decline. After committing the murder, Dorian forces an old acquaintance named Alan Campbell to dispose of the body using scientific methods. Although Alan obeys, the situation eventually leads to his own destruction. Despite his attempts to continue living normally, Dorian becomes increasingly paranoid and fearful. The portrait grows more horrible each time he looks at it, showing the full extent of his crimes and corruption. Haunted by guilt and fear, Dorian begins to wonder whether redemption is still possible. One day he decides to change his life and behave more kindly. After performing what he believes is a good action, he rushes to the attic, hoping the portrait will look better. Instead, the painting appears even worse. Dorian realizes the terrible truth. His attempt to change was motivated by vanity rather than genuine morality. He hoped to improve the appearance of the portrait rather than truly transform his soul. Overwhelmed by despair, Dorian decides that the only way to escape the curse is to destroy the painting. Late at night, he returns to the attic with the knife he used to kill Basil. Looking at the hideous image in the portrait, he plunges the knife into the canvas. Moments later, servants in the house hear a terrible scream. When they finally break into the locked attic, they find the portrait restored to its original beauty, the young and innocent face Basil had painted years earlier. Lying on the floor beneath it is the body of an old, ugly man with a knife in his heart. Only by the rings on his fingers do they recognize that the dead man is Dorian Gray. Through this haunting story, Oscar Wilde explores the consequences of living a life devoted entirely to pleasure and appearance. Dorian's eternal youth allows him to escape the visible consequences of his actions, but his soul cannot escape corruption. The portrait becomes a powerful symbol of conscience and truth. While Dorian tries to hide his sins from the world, the painting silently records every moral failure. The novel also examines the influence people can have on one another. Lord Henry's philosophy awakens Dorian's obsession with beauty and pleasure, while Basil represents the voice of morality and artistic integrity. In the end, Dorian's tragedy reminds us that beauty without morality can become dangerous. A life focused only on pleasure and appearance may seem glamorous at first, but it can ultimately lead to emptiness, guilt, and destruction. Even more than a century after its publication, The Picture of Dorian Gray continues to fascinate readers with its dark atmosphere, philosophical themes, and unforgettable story about the price of eternal youth.
It was a very good book. Did you like it too? You can write your thoughts in the comments section. See you in the next summary.